right, so yes, Samuel and I have a few parallels in the presentation. Thanks for inviting me. My name is Brian Rees. I'm a UX practitioner and short notice, so a bit of a short prezzo, but we'll see how we go. So one of my favorite tweets, don't kill kittens. So before I jump into the ROI of UX, first I need to explain what UX is and what UI is, as well as what they are not. So essentially, UX is all about research, strategy, analysis, validation, and testing. It is not design. UI is design. It is visual design, but they are completely separate disciplines. So we want to reduce assumptions as they create risk. When we guess, we almost always get it wrong, or mostly wrong. Instead, we want to base decisions on facts. And the UX process uses the scientific method to uncover facts. So UX research uncovers problems and then helps determine if anyone wants the problems to be solved. There's no shortage of problems in the world, but do they merit another app to solve them? And with validating with validated problems, we can now ideate solutions. Unfortunately, this is where most products start. There is confidence a problem exists, which users would love to be solved, and the exact solution goes into development for the next great whiz-bang app. But however, there is typically little to no research, but an abundance of confidence because I know this. I worked in this industry for years. I know what it needs, and this app will do it. But to be fair, uh, that may be true, but in my experience, that's not usually the case. Following the scientific method, we can create our hypothesis using those problems and solutions. And there may be confidence. We think our solution is the bee's knees, but what we think is really a moot point. We need users to tell us it's the bee's knees before we can justify moving forward. It's much cheaper to pivot now than after the app is built or even only designed. Once those boxes are ticked, we now have the high level of confidence. What we're doing is what will create a viable product and now needs visual representation for usability testing. So UX research doesn't end with validation. Once design concepts are created, they have to be tested with real users or potential users for new products. This must be an iterative process, not just designs, but too. That ensures iterative changes made aren't counterproductive and thus change the trajectory of the product's success. UXers are UXers are not superheroes. We're not MacGyver. Um, we don't apply. I mean, we apply known research and best practices just like other professionals, such as physicians, weather person, or economists. But nothing's 100%. However, I will say, thankfully, we have a much better success rate than weather forecasts. And research going back as far as 1980s indicates UX can help return up to 100x the amount spent on UX. So how is this possible? Well, we know 50% of dev time is redevelopment. And I've yet to meet a developer who likes to redo their work, even when they're paid by the hour. fewer support tickets or the need for user training as a result. A better product, the more revenue for a product can generate it. If you're building an app instead of intended on being a viable business, this is essential. More user advocates should result in fewer instances of churn. Obviously, we need users and ability to benchmark products, performing, comparing to the competition, where they were before your product versus how they're performing when your product is actually in the competition. And how will your app differentiate itself from the dozens of other apps in similar space? And there's always alternative users can turn to. So we know most apps lifespan is short if a user's initial experience isn't positive. This can result in permanent brand damage and must be avoided. So let's look at this scenario. There's 16 talents, each earning $100 an hour for 1,000 hours. So that's roughly a $600,000 project. Given 50% of dev time is development, that's $300,000 and 500 hours wasted. At the same time, for morale starts festering, division between team members, and we all know that ROI is usually are usually tight anyway. And how can we apply UX and add value? Well, with only 10% improvement, you're gaining $30,000 and 50 hours returned. Even better, meeting timelines and quicker to market launches. All that while reducing support tickets and creating and reducing brand damage. So, why isn't this the norm? I have no idea. Resistance to change. It's the old adage of we got to get the horseless carriages off the street. They're scaring the horses. So my question to you is, have you participated on a project in which UX research set a product's trajectory? If anyone wants to share their experience, good, bad, or ugly, I'd love to know. And that is it for me.
Thanks, Brian. I have had good experiences with UX, and I actually think that you guys are MacGyver. That's how it feels, coming from a development perspective. Yeah, so that's my perspective on UX designers. I do have a question for you, and this is really, I'm always amazed at how UX people can come in to conversations with no assumptions. So do you have any pointers on how to go into conversations with no assumptions? Because I often think that I do, and I try to go into conversations with no assumptions, but I actually find that I do have them, and I don't know how to stop doing it. So do you have any tips for that?
We all have assumptions, but the thing that if we were to work on a project together, you would hear from me over and over until you'd be telling me I get it. Is doesn't matter what we think. We need to go get data. We need to research. We need to find out if we have a strong personality on a team that really wants something. Well, let's go find out. We should be open to ideas, but we want to base decision off of those facts. And there's always going to be some assumptions, because you could test forever and research forever and you never get anything done. So there reaches a point which you just have to say, all right, we're okay to go with these assumptions. We've eliminated these, we've validated others. Let's go to the next step so we can keep moving forward. But we all have assumptions.
Okay. Another question, how do you validate a UX idea? Do you rely on some research beforehand or validate based on some analytics later on?
So I take it you're talking about a new product idea or a new feature on existing product?
One moment, someone's typing. Strategy. How do you validate a UX strategy?
How do we validate a strategy? That's an interesting question. I don't know that validating a strategy as much as leaning on experience, known research, what is, after researching your competition, what they do, and always understand it's evolving. If you see something that might be counterproductive, you can pivot. Having someone that is in the marketing space, like Samuel, coming in to help input when it gets to that point of launch and pre-launch, planning the launch and then moving forward with the launch. But the strategy I'm most involved with is the strategy of the research and the validation of the product, validation of the users, then the actual concepts themselves going through iterative testing from low-fi, mid-fi, high-fi development, et cetera.
And then is that how you know whether or not you're making the right decision by validating those?
That can tell you if you're heading, if it's a, as I say, a high likelihood of that trajectory being on the correct path.
Okay.
And always have to understand that a pivot may be necessary. And that's why we continually test iteratively. And there's always a minimum of 2 rounds of testing. You do something, you test it, you identify problems, you adjust with those solutions, but now you have to validate, was that solution productive or was it counterproductive? So you want that second round to validate that hypothesis solution.
Great, thank you very much. Thanks, Brian.